Welcome to the ODDSBREAKER'S #1 place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 42 of 2021. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neil. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at the ODDSBREAKERS and follow us on social media / the ODDSBREAKERS. This episode is being brought to you by MyBookie.ag. For a 50% sign-up bonus, please visit MyBookie and use the promo code The ODDSBREAKERS. Terms, conditions, and locations apply. If you'd like to help us out with our costs, sponsor the website and the podcast, we'd love to help you out. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, and become a member. For $24.99 a month, you can get my premium plays before the line moves. If nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. My friends, hope you are checking our handicappers out. Patrick, doing a fantastic job in hockey. Nick is just crushing baseball, and Farley is the man when it comes to the NBA. If you'd like to contribute to the ODDSBREAKERS, please feel free to contact us at admin@theoddsbreakers. I know a few of you have already. I have to get back to you. Been swamped. Just got back from vacation. But definitely hold up. I will be getting back to you. And if anybody else out there is in the business and wants to obviously boost your potential, please contact us on Twitter via DM or at the website at the ODDSBREAKERS. We have a great show for you today, my friends. I'm going to go solo here. We're going to talk a little bit more NFL. We have the AFC East to cover and the AFC West. We're going to discuss some season win totals. We're going to discuss some previews and some changes that happened within these teams. After that, you know what we're going to get into. Some UFC Fight Night 190. Alexander Volkov versus Cyril Gane headlines that. Can't wait to get into a little MMA for you guys. Next week, we're going to start bringing back some guests again. Have a couple on the docket that I'm very excited about. Also, going to start talking a little bit more college football because college football is next. We're not going to give up on the NFL either now that our previews are going to be done. We're still going to keep modifying and changing just like how you adjust power ratings every single week. And if you'd like to know some of the processes of handicapping NFL or college football or even MLB, feel free to ask. You know, we're going to get into a show where we start talking about some of the key disciplines when it comes to handicapping. And even the professionals forget that sometimes. I forget that stuff. And then, you know, you lose a bet and you're like, why did I not think of the obvious? Well, how did the obvious go right past me? It's always good to remind yourself some of the key disciplines. Later, probably August, we're going to talk a little bit more about the process when it comes to football. But if you have any questions, or if you want to just break down a fight, a game, MLB, anything that I specialize in, feel free to contact us and tweet us at the ODDSBREAKERS. Had a great vacation in Key West, my friends. But was there about 5 days-ish, Wednesday through Sunday. And that place is just nuts. I mean, straight up nuts. It's full of restaurants, full of fun, crazy, crazy bars on Duval Street. Great harbor area. We did this little tiki bar boat tour. I'd recommend this to everybody because it was absolutely fun and fantastic. The captain was awesome. She took us out, and it's a little circular bar, and it's a tiki bar with a motor, and she takes you to a sandbar. You go swimming there, shows you all the yachts out there, some of the homes on the islands right there. It's just a fun time and something I highly recommend doing. So real quick Key West story. Me and the group went to this bar on Duval Street, and it was called the Bull, right? They have like 3 levels on this bar. The bottom's called the Bull. The middle is called the Whistle Bar. There's pool tables and stuff out there. And then the top is called the Garden of Eden. Well, there's a cover charge to get in the Garden of Eden, but we went to the bar, kind of hung out for a while at the Whistle Bar, and then they said, you should go up there. We're like, why? They said, clothing is optional. I'm like, okay, yeah, like a bunch of people are going to be running around naked up there. Yeah, Sure, right? But of course, as we had some cocktails and got a little bit more buzzed, we decided that $10 wasn't too bad at all, and we'll go check it out and get some fresh air, right? And so we get up there, and wow, the stairs are packed. It's kind of going through the back of the place, and we're like, holy smokes! And it took a little while to get up there. And I'm like, well, what are we gonna get? And all of a sudden, the noise gets louder and louder and louder and louder, and there's a DJ up there pumping songs from '90s and '80s rap. I mean, seriously, right up my genre. And pretty much 80s, 90s rock is probably my genre, right? But either way, it was cool. I heard some great songs, and I get up there. I'm like, yeah, I don't see too many people naked. And, all of a sudden, I look to my left, and there's this big dude standing there with a black shirt on and literally no bottoms whatsoever. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I thought this definitely wasn't the place that we want to be. We're with our wives. There's about 6 of us. And then, there's still a crowd of people, can't see the dance floor. We go get a drink. Well, they already got the drink to me by then, as soon as I got through that. And then we start walking towards the dance floor, and I look to see who's dancing. And there's about 8 to 12 college-age girls, butt-ass naked, silicone, all that stuff, grinding all over the dance floor. I'm like,
hell no, to the no, 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 hell to the no, hell to the no, to the no, no, no,
no. Just, I'm like, hell no, this ain't happening, right? Not hell no, I don't want to see that. Because at the time, everyone was pretty drunk, and it was literally a trip. Now, they're playing all this music, and, people of all ages are dancing. We kept our clothes on, and the wives actually didn't kick us out right away. We hung out there for a little while, and people watched and drank. But there's a small caveat to all this. You are not allowed to touch your cell phone or take pictures, right? They're scared that you would take pictures, so you're not even allowed to have your cell phone. If you take it out of your pocket, they snap on you and threaten to kick you out. So with me, I had some games going and some scores I really wanted to check, but instead decided to put the phone away and just finish my bourbon and enjoy the rest of the time with our group before we ended up going to another place. But I'll tell you right now, Key West is a rockin' place, and the live music in a lot of those bars is absolutely phenomenal. One of the other things that I wanted to do was go fishing, and some boats went out, and it was quite windy. The boat, unfortunately, that I was supposed to be on canceled because of the wind. It must have been smaller or something, I don't know. But one person from our hotel did catch a 180-pound tarpon. I didn't get to see it. He showed it to one of our friends, and this was the day we were leaving, but it made me a little bit jealous because I love going deep sea fishing whenever I go to a coast. I love catching mahis, marlin, barracuda, wahoos. I have caught a marlin before, and that was back in 2008. Ever since then, just mostly mahis and tunas and things like that. Been on some boats that caught marlin and sailfish, but something I love to do. Unfortunately, wasn't able to do it, but I mean, Key West as a whole, totally worth it. Amazing food, great company out there, just tons of fun. I highly recommend doing it. All right, well, let's get into a little NFL football then, my friends, and we have the AFC East and the AFC West to talk about. A little season preview and some win totals. Might be a little bit of value on some of them. Some of them might be you want to wait, but either way, it's going to be some good information for you to prep for because I worked hard on it, and I try to summarize everything I know and into a little, just some quick information, and I think that's been helpful to people. I've had some compliments about it, and hopefully it's going to help your research go a little bit easier. And obviously you can go back to previous podcasts if you missed any of this. But starting with the AFC East, not only did this conference even up last year. I mean, it really heated up between two historically bad teams, the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. I mean, the Jets were the Jets, but the Patriots really took a step back, and that was somewhat predicted. It was one of our predictions. We faded the Patriots, and we went hard on the Bills, plus 175. We bet them to win the division, one of our bigger ones that definitely hit. And now, we'll see what we have. The Patriots were one of the most injured teams out there. I think that there's going to forever be a debate between Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. I mean, this really fueled the fire here, too, with Belichick not making the playoffs and Tom Brady winning the Super Bowl. Now, small sample sizes, any good sports bettor knows to just kind of ignore that. And if you want to engage with the trolls, God bless you. But in my opinion, Bill Belichick's a great coach. Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time. The only way that would change is if Bill Belichick and the Patriots over the next 2 or 3 years turn into the Jets. Yeah, that might tell me a little bit that he might have been overrated. But just watching Bill Belichick making in-game adjustments over the years has shown me that he's also a great coach. It wasn't all just Tom Brady to me. But this division plays the AFC South, which is good for them, right? Because you still have the Jaguars and the Texans there, right? I mean, two easier teams to beat, especially the Texans, and NFC South, which is medium now that Breeze is gone. I mean, the NFC South was looked at really good when Brady went there and when Breeze was good. Obviously, when Atlanta was good. But Atlanta's kind of intermediate right now. Carolina, I think, took a step up, but the Saints took a step down, and Tampa's still going to be competing for the Super Bowl. Let's start with the number one team from last year, and that's how we do it, the Buffalo Bills. And the Vegas win total is about 11-ish. I mean, I've seen some 10.5s really juiced highly to the over. And my power rating on the Buffalo Bills is about 5.75 points better than the average team, at least of right now. Their at-large games are versus Washington, at Kansas City, and versus Pittsburgh. If you remember, that's what a first-place schedule gets you, first place of the other conferences for your at-large. The good thing for the whole AFC, if you remember, they get all home games for that 17 game against an NFC opponent. The key losses: wide receiver John Brown, defensive tackle Quentin Jefferson, and just kind of like a bunch of smaller names, really. Key additions: wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders, quarterback Mitch Trubisky, and once again, kind of a bunch of smaller names. I don't think the Bills gave up that much. Key draft picks: edge rusher Gregory Rousseau, edge rusher Carlos Basham Jr., and a bunch we shall see as well. I think if the draft, I'll say more names if I think they're more key to their team, but if not, I always say we shall see. Let's go over the summary here. Man, the Bills, 13 wins last year, fantastic. Benefit of an easier schedule, though, and good thing their schedule is medium easy because you still have the Jets in that division, underachieving Patriots. And the good news is that they're at large is one of them's Washington, and Washington was a 7-win team last year. So Pittsburgh has a lower season win total than a first-place team you'd expect. So that's how this first-place team has a medium easy schedule. So good for them. The Bills did have a lower Pythagorean adjusted win total of 11.15. But they also, at the same time, dropped an almost for sure victory in Arizona with that Hail Murray, if you remember. I mean, that play's still ringing in my head. But the good news for the Bills, friendly schedule. Their most likely losses are at Kansas City, maybe, probably, at Tennessee, and at Tampa Bay. But if you look at the rest of the schedule, I mean, they should beat Miami probably 2 times. They should beat the Patriots. I mean, let's just say between the 4 games between Miami and the Patriots, they should win 3 of those 4 games. So I see 4 losses there. You're going to sweep the Jets. Losing John Brown was gained back with Emmanuel Sanders, right? I mean, so that was kind of like robbing Peter to pay pay Paul type situation. And they might even get a little better because of that. I like Emmanuel Sanders, right? So the edge rushers they got should make them not lose a beat on defense. And I like that. I like that for McDermott. So with 17 games, like I said, I see 3 losses, Kansas City at Tennessee, at Tampa. Maybe they win one of them. I see 1 loss between the Miami and Patriots. And let's just throw in another loss there. So you have 5. That would still put them at 12-17. So I actually kind of like the over here at 11. I'm not super excited about it because, you know, football is, and the Patriots scare me a little bit. But my number is actually 12.48. So eventually I'm going to take this over. I haven't yet. I'm wondering if people are going to start going on the Patriots a little bit more and maybe on the Dolphins a little bit more, drive that number down. But it's early. So this will probably be a play for us. Over 11. And just like my canceled fishing trip would say,
you're going to need a bigger boat.
Next team, the Miami Dolphins. Vegas win total 9, juice to the over, -130. Dolphins power rating 1.25 points better than the average team. Schedule's easy. At large versus the New York Giants. At Las Vegas Raiders versus Baltimore. Right? That's pretty easy. And good for them because the Raiders were kind of a fraudulent second place team. Right? The Giants, NFC East, once again, I mean, I think they'll be improved. But, you know, the Baltimore Ravens is a tougher one, but at least they get them at home. So that's pretty favorable right there, you know. And that's why the Dolphins are looked at one of the easiest schedules in the league. Key losses. Defensive tackle Devon Godchow. Inside linebacker Kyle Van Noy. Kind of jumping back from them to the Patriots. Quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick. And center Ted Karras. Key additions, Will Fuller, wide receiver, defensive tackle Adam Butler, quarterback Jacoby Brissett. Yeah, get a quarterback that's not better than yours, right? That's probably the thing that they wanted to do this year. And cornerback Justin Coleman, who they drafted, wide receiver Jalen Waddle, edge Jalen Phillips, safety Javon Holland. I mean, it's a shame that this team won 10 games and missed the playoffs because they were better than a couple AFC teams or NFC teams there, in my opinion, especially the Bears. Probably the Washington football team, and they were stuck in the AFC and got burned. Offensive coordinator Chan Gailey's gone. He took the brunt of the blame for not getting Tua ready. I think he was a Fitzmagic guy. And after a 1-month search, they decided to promote Eric Stoodsville and George Godsey. You know, Stoodsville's actually from Madison area in Verona. He played football there years ago. Kind of interesting because I lived in Madison, actually real close to Verona, a mile away for a long time, right after college, that is. But anyways, I don't understand why you do that. You get rid of the offensive coordinator, you promote the guys coming up. Both of these guys were on some pretty bad teams, and you know, they just kind of, it's who you know type thing is how they got their jobs, and now they're co-offensive coordinators. I don't understand that. I don't know how that's going to work with Tua here. This season win total number at 9 screams at you, is Tua going to be good or not, right? Because you know the defense is going to be good, and it's probably going to be one of the best defenses in the AFC. But are they going to score? I mean, they did get Jalen Waddle, but still. I mean, this is not Alabama beating a bunch of small teams. These are grown men, right? It's a big difference between college and NFL. So, I don't know. I do know that Tua at least beat some teams like the Rams in Arizona, but everyone knows it was those turnovers on defense, some touchdowns the defense scored. He kind of just managed those games. I mean, you saw Fitzmagic come in to clean up that game versus the Raiders. That Tua couldn't even throw the ball in, right? I mean, Tua's young. The jury's not out on him yet, but it just did not look good this first year. I would have preferred them drafting Devontae Smith because I thought Tua had probably a better rapport with him as a total. I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't completely follow Alabama football as much as an Alabama fan would, and maybe you guys can correct me, but we'll see if Waddle stays healthy. Great schedule is really good. So my number is 9.77, so I lean to the over here just because of that awesome schedule. New England Patriots is the next team. Vegas win total 9.5, juice to the under. New England's power rating is 1 point better than the average team. So you can see there's a pretty big drop-off for me from the Buffalo Bills to these two teams. Schedule's medium. At-large games versus the LA Chargers, or at LA Chargers, home versus Dallas, and versus Cleveland. Key losses, guard Joe Thuney, defense tackle Adam Butler. Key additions, oh my God, tons of them. I mean, outside linebacker Matt Judon, tight end Jonnu Smith, tight end Hunter Henry, safety Jalen Mills, wide receiver Nelson Aguilar, defensive tackle Davon Godchow, inside linebacker Kyle Van Noy from Miami, center Ted Karras, and a few others. I mean, this team spent so much money in free agency, the most I've ever seen them spend. You know, they're probably like, we don't have Brady. We want to beef this team up immediately because they have Cam Newton there. But their draft pick in Mac Jones is really interesting for me because that kid looks so dang good. And I know it's college, and he's throwing to wide open guys that are way better than everybody else. But he was precise, and he was smart, and he could check down, and he played in a pro-style offense. You know, I mean, for the semi-pro style offense, but still. Defensive lineman Christian Barmore, great draft pick, I think, too. And edge rusher Ronnie Perkins. I mean, breaking out the checkbook, the problem is I don't like Cam. I don't know. He's probably a great guy. He probably would have your back. But he just kind of seems to have a different type of attitude than other quarterbacks as a leader to me. You know, he feels like a star receiver almost in a way. A little less complainy than that, but still. I don't like the way that he's had those surgeries on his shoulder. And he did show some flashes last year. I mean, Jesus, I think they beat the Chargers like 40-0 or something. But, I mean, if it's not dink and dunk, Cam could be in a lot of trouble. If he gets pressure, he gets in a lot of trouble. He can't throw the ball to the seams. He can't throw deep. He doesn't check down that well. I'm worried about him. And you wonder when, I'm going to say when, because that's my prediction. I think Mac Jones will be the starter this year. When that happens, you know, what's it going to take for that to happen? And where are they going to go from there? Is Mac going to be that good? Their Pythagorean win percentage matched their total wins almost to a T, which was, 7 wins? But they only ranked 26th in the league in total yards per game. They just could not get the yards down the field. Partially Cam's fault. But you have to remember, this was the second most injured team out of anywhere. And Football Outsiders has an article about that as well. They did a good job. They factored in COVID. They factored in the weights for how much you played. I recommend that article. I endorse it. But I think the Patriots, to come into this season, just like they always do, as an above-average team and kind of falter a little bit. So I think they can win 9 to 10 games, though, because of how injured they were. I had to give them a little bit back for that. My number's 9.5 wins. And I guess the market says that too. So nothing really I can do with that one. No play. Finally, the New York Jets. Vegas win total is 6. Jets power rating minus 7.25. One of the worst teams. At large games versus Philadelphia. At Denver versus Cincinnati. Coach Adam Gase, key loss. Guard Pat Elflein. Defensive end Henry Anderson. Outside linebacker Jordan Jenkins. Outside linebacker Terrell Basham. Wide receiver Brashard Perryman and quarterback Joe Flacco. Key additions Coach Robert Saleh. Defensive end Carl Lawson. Wide receiver Corey Davis. Defensive tackle Sheldon Rankins. Cornerback Justin Hardy. Guard Dan Feeney. Inside linebacker Jared Davis. Free safety LaMarcus Joyner and a few more. This team broke out the pocketbook as well and spent a ton. All right. They drafted Zach Wilson, obviously, from BYU. Offensive tackle Elijah Vera Tucker from USC. Wide receiver Elijah Moore from Ole Miss. Can't believe my memory's working so good right now. Running back Michael Carter from North Carolina and a bunch more. So how did this how did protecting the quarterback do for this team last year? Because remember, they drafted Mekhi Becton and got the line. Not good at all, because Adam Gase, man, had his worst season by far in his coaching tenure. I felt kind of bad for him because I remember he was drafting, he had his kid by him and everything. But at the same time, he made a ton of money, so can't feel that bad. I'm sure he'll land back on his feet somewhere. He's not defensive-minded, but Robert Saleh is. And he's going to bring over a familiar face with him in Mike LaFleur. And it's familiar because he looks like his brother, Matt LaFleur, who is head coach of the Green Bay Packers.
Unreal.
What's unreal is that he was the quarterback's coach behind Kyle Shanahan. And if Shanahan rubs off on Mike LaFleur, just like Matt's been coached in his time to become a head coach, watch out, because that's some great coaching genetics right there. That's a great coaching tree with Shanahan right there. Okay. I mean, he's starting something really nice in San Fran as a head coach. And if you remember, he was the offensive coordinator in Atlanta when they went to the Super Bowl and their defense blew it. Anyways, I like to see all these moves. But the Jets, even though they had 2 wins last year, they still had the lowest Pythagorean winning percentage at 3.1. Jacksonville's had a higher expected or Pythagorean winning percentage than they did. All right. And that's adjusting for 17 games. It's 3.1. I mean, this team was terrible last year, but I can see some upside. You know, I can see some upside here. And I think Vegas does as well, because the season win total on this team is 6. Just a flat 6. You know, their offense was horrible, but part of that was because they were playing catch up. They were the 4th most injured team, according to Football Outsiders, and their defense was part of it. I think this team is going to have some struggles in their first 6 games. They have a tough first 6 games. But as long as Zach Wilson isn't a total bust, he's very athletic, great arm. I think that they could start winning a little bit at 6 or 7, at game 6, 7, or 8. And I think Saleh is going to keep his defense in the games. I think he's going to protect Zach Wilson. I think he's going to run the ball a ton, kind of like the Niners did, so he can protect his quarterback and keep his defense off the field. It's just a defensive-minded coach. That's what the good ones do. So I can see some unders. I mean, I think the Jets are going to be an unders team for me, but we're going to see. Of course, if the market thinks the same, then I won't like it as much. My number, to be honest with you, is actually 6.62 wins. So I have some belief on him through a 17-game schedule. Lean over. All right, my friends. Now it's time for a little AFC West. And this is obviously the division of the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, 2 Super Bowl appearances in a row. If you want to count the year before, AFC Championship game appearance, right? But I gotta tell you, I think we found out a few things about this division last year. Some questions that I had. Kansas City's still great, right? Very deserving favorite. It's hard to repeat to win another Super Bowl, but they got there in consecutive years. The Raiders can't and may not get over the hump. But I think John Gruden's probably sitting okay with his 10-year contract. I don't think he's going to get fired anytime soon. Right? The Chargers, it was great taking that season win total under 8 last year. But I'll tell you this, the people that got locked at 7, if they took it very late, pushed because of that game against the Chiefs at the very end. I think firing Lance Lynn was smart. And I think drafting Justin Herbert was probably smarter. Guy I was a little bit wrong on. Right? Well, the Drew Lock situation for the Denver Broncos kind of showed that he's not a franchise quarterback. And I think they know that. They've been sniffing around Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers, as you know. Must be weird for him in this situation. Have to be bitter playing for a team, yet you still have to play your ass off to have a career in the NFL. Throw Teddy Bridgewater into that. The AFC West plays the AFC North, and the NFC East this year, which I would call medium in general, right? But the schedules of these teams individually have some pretty huge differences because the Raiders have one of the hardest schedules, who took second in the division, while the Broncos have one of the two easiest schedules in the whole league. And they took fourth, right? While the top team, Kansas City, is pretty medium-ish, and the Chargers are pretty medium, and they took third. It's kind of interesting. The difference between the Chargers and the Raiders' schedule from finishing second and third is massive, and we'll get into that. I mean, the good thing is that they get to play the Bengals with the AFC North, right? Steelers aren't supposed to be as good. And the NFC East, worst division in football last year. We'll see if that's going to repeat this year. Chiefs Vegas win total 12.5. Juice to the under. Minus 125, just slightly. Kansas City's Chiefs power rating I have as the best team in the NFL, 8 points better than the average team. So, the schedule I have is medium hard, at large versus Green Bay, versus Buffalo, and at Tennessee. Of course, you're going to have hard at large games. I mean, they're hoping Green Bay doesn't have Rodgers, I guess. Tennessee's looking better with their Julio Jones, but you're still the Chiefs. You're the Kings. Key losses: left tackle Eric Fisher, wide receiver Sammy Watkins, defensive end Tano Pascanagan. I probably just destroyed his name. Quarterback Brashard Breeland. Key additions: left tackle Orlando Brown, guard Joe Thuney, defensive tackle Jaron Reed, and running back Damian Williams. So as you can see, they lost Fisher, but they got Orlando Brown in that big trade with the Ravens. And they also signed Joe Thuney for a ton of money from the Patriots. Key draft picks: linebacker Nick Bolton, center Creed Humphrey, and a bunch of meh. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they didn't have a ton of draft picks there. They lost their first rounder. Summary: I mean, the Chiefs made it all the way last year. Lost to Tampa. Part of that was due to their offensive line woes, due to injuries and age. But part of that was also due to what happened to Andy Reid's son. I mean, imagine that happening the week of the Super Bowl. What's your team talking about? What's the distraction? Wondering about their coach. Because Andy Reid's son was a coach, and he did that. Imagine how terrible he felt. And you just don't know how much of it was really his fault. When there's alcohol involved, it doesn't matter. You're guilty no matter what. Someone can just jump in front of you, and you can be sober, and you be completely innocent. Someone can jump in front of you. You have a couple drinks, you go into jail for years. That's the difference right there. Not sure how long he's going to go, but what a terrible thing to happen. Terrible for the family, terrible for Andy Reid, terrible for everybody that was friends with him, right? And I think the Chiefs are probably a little weaker still at right tackle. I do like their moves for, signing Orlando Brown, trading for him and signing Joe Thuney. But I don't like their right tackle, Mike Remmers. He was awful in the Super Bowl when they re-signed him. So that scratches my head a little bit. But at the same time, the Chiefs are always loaded with good players. They lost some depth at cornerback to free agency, I suppose. I think 2 or 3 corners left. Most of them were backups. I think the only one that wasn't was Brashard Breeland, right? But the Chiefs are just going to come back like the Chiefs. They're probably going to have a great start to the year. Probably going to play pissed off. Don't think I want anything to do with either side of that Cleveland game. It's like a 6-point spread. I mean, the power ratings say Chiefs. The motivation in this part says Chiefs. But at the same time, Cleveland just played their asses tough in the playoffs. We're going to get into that way later. Probably got to think way more about that game. But either way, the offensive line should improve from what it was at the end of the year last year. They were pretty banged up last year as a whole. Not terribly. I mean, they kept their core, right? The Tyreek Hills were in most of the games. The Kelseys, right? With Kelsey, of course. in the Patrick Mahomes. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was injured for a while, but they were pretty deep at running back. We'll see what it is now with Damian Williams leaving. Of course, Le'Veon Bell's not there, but I'd even count him as a significant loss because he barely even played. The defense is worrying me a little bit from a depth perspective, but I have this number at 13.37 wins. And I still think that they do have the best chance at the number one seed in the AFC. I know, shocking, right? So my number is 13.37, but I'm not going to take over 12.5. Lean to the over. Next team, the Las Vegas Raiders. Vegas season win total 7. Las Vegas's power rating for me, -1. -1 point worse than the average team. At-large games versus Chicago, where you'd probably see mostly Chicago fans in Las Vegas there, paying $500 to $1,000 a ticket. Versus Miami and at Indianapolis. Key losses: wide receiver Nelson Aguilar, running back Devontae Booker, defensive end Takaris McKinley, right tackle Trent Brown, center Rodney Hudson, guard Gabe Jackson, free safety LaMarcus Joyner, and defensive end Vic Beasley, who really didn't do that much anyway. Key additions: defensive end Yannick Ngakoue, running back Kenyon Drake, wide receiver John Brown, defensive end Solomon Thomas, who didn't do a ton last year either with the Niners, defensive tackle Quentin Jefferson, and cornerback Casey Hayward. Key draft picks: Alex Leatherwood, tackle; safety Trayvon Morig; edge rusher Malcolm Kuntz; and safety Divine Diablo. So, I mean, this team is the sharpest fade right now for everyone. All the sharp players are fading the Raiders. Again, I mean, they just do this every year, I feel like. I mean, I'm not saying they're wrong, but you look at it, they're kind of like the fade team. And I think the public's going to jump right on back. They're going to say they're not going to have as many fans because everyone's going to go to Vegas, buy up the tickets, blah, blah, blah. They got travel. You know, that's always been a thing, too. John Gruden, terrible at defense. No one believes in Derek Carr. I mean, that's what you're going to get with the Raiders, right? And I'm not saying they're wrong. Also, the narrative, they lost their offensive line. Trent Brown, center Rodney Hudson, Gabe Brown, guard, right? So, I mean, I first, when I saw that, when they lost all that offensive line, I thought that was pretty bad. I did. But then I kind of look at their depth chart here. I mean, they have a first-round draft pick in Colton Miller that was ranked really high in 2018. That's going into left tackle. And this year's first-round pick was from Alabama, Alex Leatherwood. Now, he's not the top-ranked tackle, and they say he's got some issues, but shit, he played for Bama. Kicked people's asses. You saw how Najee Harris ran. Didn't have a lot of issues breaking through the line. You know? I mean, a lot of analysts overanalyze things. You still got Richie Incognito over there. Crazy guy. I think he tried to cut his dad's head off before his funeral or something. I don't know, look it up. But anyways, it looks bad that the Raiders lost their top receiver and all those linemen as well. But I think they kind of filled it in well. They signed John Brown. They signed Willie Snead. You remember in the draft they got Henry Ruggs, right? Now, the big narrative in 2019, before last year's COVID year, was how they had to travel over 32,000 miles, and it was the biggest public fade. And how'd that go? It didn't go well because they won 7 games. Maybe the very first sharpest people that hit it might have got the 7.5, whatever, but I'm pretty sure that thing closed at 6. So I'm not as low as some people are on this Raiders team. But looking at their schedule and their potential non-home field advantage does have me worried as well. So I'm not going to be fading them, and I actually have them at 7.2 wins, right? So I'm just going to lean to the under. But that's low number for a pretty motivated John Gruden team and a motivated Derek Carr. Number 3, the LA Chargers, Vegas win total 9, juice to the over, -150. So here's a team that people think might win, right? I think this is so interesting with the Chargers here too, because when I look at this team, they're 6-1 to win the division, and obviously you're just betting against Kansas City, right? 6-1, and the Denver Broncos are 5-1 because of their schedule, but their season win total is a little bit lower, 8.5 juice to the over -140, right? So back to this. I mean, like I said, Justin Herbert was fantastic. My power rating is 0, and I had to move them up from what they did by firing Coach Anthony Lynn. Their at-large games is versus Minnesota, versus New England, and at Houston. At Houston is wonderful. We'll see about Minnesota. I'm not as high as some people are on Minnesota. I'm probably even with them and the Bears, to be honest with you. New England, we'll see what happens with Cam and everything, like I just mentioned. But the key losses are obviously Anthony Lynn, Hunter Henry on tight end, who was never able to make the game because he's always injured. Safety Rayshon Jenkins, inside linebacker Denzel Perryman, outside linebacker Melvin Ingram, center Mike Pouncey, guard Trey Turner. Coach Brandon Staley, key addition, new coach. Offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi, center Corey Linsley, right tackle Matt Filer, tight end Jared Cook, guard O'Day Aboshi. Key draft picks, tackle Rashawn Slater, cornerback Asante Samuel, and just a bunch of dudes. Justin Herbert turned out to be a fantastic pick. Third quarterback in the 2020 draft. The Chargers, like I said, the under 8 wins was our biggest bet, and I'm really fortunate to get it. But you got to remember that last game that they had to get that 7th win, Kansas City had to bench their players because they already took home field advantage throughout the AFC. They took the number 1 seed. So you wonder if that goes differently, obviously. But, I mean, they beat Kansas City's second string pretty good. Anthony Lynn just did not know how to manage clock in games. I mean, he did some good things, but just his in-game management, his strategy was horrible, right? I mean, this Raiders team choked some games away. This Chargers team choked some games away. I think one of them was against the Raiders, but there's a lot of games they should have won. There's a Denver one, just lost at the last seconds of the game. A lot of sports bettors were pissed at this team because of it, and it was pretty much Anthony Lynn. But it's a really smart move with getting the last 2 years. Remember getting Brian Bulaga last year? Packers and Steelers offensive linemen. I mean, their offensive lines would have been fantastic the last 5 or so years. So I like what they did there, right? Getting Corey Linsley this year, Aboshi. There's a lot of guys that they picked up that's just absolutely fantastic. And plus, they drafted that tackle in Rashawn Slater. They're going to protect their quarterback. They're going to protect their investment. That's very smart. They lost a lot of guys, but Jesus, Melvin Ingram was never healthy. Hunter Henry, like I said before, ex-stars. But, I mean, do you count that last win? The fact that they got rid of that coach, I have to give them a huge upgrade. And I really like the coaches that they hired. Brandon Staley, very experienced coach, calling plays under the Sean Payton tree. I mean, you got the guy that's been under Sean Payton for all those years, and Joe Lombardi. And, of course, the Rams defensive coordinator, the outside linebackers coach behind Fangio for head coach, and Staley is great. So, loving what they did there. This is kind of like what the opposite of Miami Dolphins should have made moves like this, in my opinion. And that's why the Chargers are such an interesting play at plus 600. It would take the Chiefs to get some serious injuries next year. Maybe Mahomes does get finally cracked a little bit. I don't know. It's not like something you bet on. But plus 600 for a team like this and for how good Herbert looked and how much they kind of stacked up on offensive line, I really got to like that. I really like that. So if their defense can hold up like it did kind of last year, this team's going to be fantastic. I mean, they're the 6th most injured team last year. So I'm not taking it yet, but I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the 600. As far as the win total, I have them at 9.33 wins. So I agree with Vegas here. No play on that. Next, we have the Denver Broncos. Vegas season win total 8.5. Juice to the over. They're supposed to have an easy schedule this year. Minus 140 to the over. Denver's power rating, minus 2.25 points worse than the average team. Schedule, easy. At large versus Detroit versus New York Jets and at Jacksonville. How nice is that? Key losses, defensive tackle Jarrell Casey, tight end Nick Vannett, cornerback A.J. Bouye, outside linebacker Jeremiah Atachua to the Bears, actually, and right tackle Juwan James, running back Philip Lindsay. Key additions, quarterback Teddy Bridgewater, cornerback Ronald Darby, cornerback Kyle Fuller, running back Mike Boone, defensive tackle Shamar Stephen. So they beefed up their defense just like, a Fangio-type team will. And their draft pick, Patrick Surtain, the number one cornerback, in my opinion, out of the draft. Was he in Georgia or Alabama? I think he was Bama. Running back Javonte Williams out of North Carolina. Linebacker Baron Browning out of Ohio State, and a bunch of smaller names. I mean, we know the defense is going to be good with Fangio, right? Well, if they can finally stop the run. I mean, if you remember, their linebackers weren't that great last year. They lost Chubb, and their opponents ran 130 yards per game versus Denver. That ranked 25th worst in the league. Now, they're pretty good against the pass, top 10 in sacks and quarterback pressures. But this Broncos team was very injured as well last year. It started out with Cortland Sutton's injury the very first game. And there's also a point that they played with no quarterback, if you remember. No quarterback. And Fangio had to have Philip Lindsay take the Wildcat. And a few other players did too. And they got their butts cleaned against the Saints that game. So the Broncos supposed to have one of the easiest schedules in the league last year. And it ended up being one of the hardest because of the Chargers, the Dolphins, and the Raiders exceeding expectations. If you remember last year, everyone's saying Denver's going to have an easy schedule. Well, it ended up really hard because of those other teams that they're playing with that were easy the year before in 2019 became very good. Denver's Pythagorean win total adjusted for 17 games was 6.1, which isn't a far cry from the 5.31 adjusted wins that they had achieved. But Fangio drafted a big cornerback in Patrick Surtain, and he reunited Bears cornerback Kyle Fuller and Ronald Darby from Philly. So, my biggest concern is offensive line, which I believe was ignored. Denver had some bad luck with Juwan James hurting himself while he tore his Achilles in non-team activities, forcing Denver to shed the salary, right? I mean, the Ravens picked him up for 2022. They paid him $500,000 this year, and they're going to give him $8 or $9 million the year after. But what a terrible move that was to work out like that. Not in your team facility. It's so weird about that. Kind of how those rules are, right? Like, don't work out in the team facility. The union tells you not to because they want to have bargaining power and all that. And then you go work out at home, and then you hurt yourself and you get cut. I mean, don't you want us to be strong next season for your team? I think the system is just so whack. But anyways, the quarterback's going to be the biggest issue here because they told Drew Lock pretty much he's not a franchise guy. He's going to have to prove himself. He's got to be a little bit bitter, but now that Teddy Bridgewater comes in, it makes it really weird, and there's going to be a controversy for sure. Bridgewater's a really good quarterback at practice, and he's going to probably wow the coaches there. I'm really curious to see what happens. And then when it comes to games, we'll see what happens, but neither of these quarterbacks really proved anything to me. I seen Lock. I seen him have some flashes last year. He kept up with some really good teams, but still, man, my problem is the Broncos don't have that offensive line, and I'm not sure if they can stop the run. They will be able to be good against the pass here, but my number is slightly below 8. It's like 7.9 or something, and it's 8.5 juice to the over. So that makes me want to think about some plus money at the 8.5, taking the under. That's my lean right now, even though I'm not even a game off. I'm going to lean hard on that, and I'm going to think about it a little bit more. Maybe search some books. There's no rush to make this play right now. But right now, the Denver Broncos, it'd be hard. I'd be hard pressed to see them go over 500 and win 9 games, even with that easy schedule. Because I'll tell you right now, Detroit's going to be bad, but they're still an NFL team. The Jets are going to be much improved, and who knows what Jacksonville's going to be. So that's my lean. My friends, I hope you enjoyed this segment. If you have any questions or corrections about these teams I discussed, tweet us at the Odds Breakers. All right, my friends, now it's time to talk a little UFC Fight Night 190. And we have 2 fights to talk about and a couple plays to give you. I looked at the card, looked at probably about 5 fights, and out of the 5, I found 2 for y'all. Didn't get done handicapping the whole card, but for premium clients, I will have that done probably by Friday. Probably Friday night, Saturday morning, for sure. So, let's get started here. We're going to look way into the prelims here because this might be one of the better fights. And we're looking at Marcin Prachnio versus Isaac Villanueva. Prachnio is about minus 200 across the board. Many places it's a little higher, minus 215. Pretty big favor here. Villanueva is a little bit older. Prachnio's 32. He is 14-5, 10 KOs, 1 submission, 3 decisions. And his only losses were 4 KOs and 1 decision, right? So you look at Isaac Villanueva, 37 years old, 15 KOs, 3 decisions, and 11 losses, 5 by KO, 5 by submission, and 1 decision. So he's 18-11, and this is the 205 weight class, light heavyweight. So we're going to see some sparks flying in this one. Looked at this one, and something really stuck out to me. You know, I was looking at Prachnio in minus 200, minus 215. Not super excited to lay that because his last 4 fights, he lost 3 of them. Now, they were great fighters. Mike Rodriguez, Magomed Ankalaev was one of them, and Sam Alvey was one of them. So, you know, he lost to some very good fighters, but you know, before that, he went on a pretty big run, and then he moved into the UFC, started losing, and then he finally beat Khalil Roundtree in the decision. But if you look at his last fights, before that decision against Khalil Roundtree, it was first round KO, first round TKO, first round KO, and then he beat Gilbert Gavallo in the One Championship Kings and Conquerors first round. Before that, Jake Butler, first round. Then all the way back in May of 2016, he went to a split decision. Okay? So this guy goes pretty hard. Lots of first rounders. Looking at Isaac Villanueva, you're looking at second round, 39 seconds in, right? First round, about a minute, right? Chase Sherman, second round, 49 seconds. Before that, first round. He goes right after it as well. He hasn't went to a decision since January of 2017. He hasn't went over a round and a half since February of 2017. Okay? So I'm looking at under 1.5 rounds here right off the bat. And I'm looking at plus 140. Are you kidding me? Plus 140 for these 2 fighters. Prachnio, out of his last 6 fights, only 1 has went past the first round. Out of his last 9 fights, only 2 have went past the first round. This is a clear under 1.5 for plus 250, or plus 140, and you can probably go under 2.5 for roughly pretty close to even money there, right? So that's what I'm taking off the bat. Now, I did want to take Prachnio possibly in a prop bet. I'm still considering that. And looking at how these two fighters match up, obviously Prochniel's the younger one, but he has 5.4 significant strikes landed per minute to Ike Villanueva's 3.62. Prochniel, 52.68% of his significant strikes against 47% for Ike. Neither fighter takes each other down that much. It's pretty much zero on the takedown average for both of them. So Prochniel's got a little bit of a 2-inch height advantage and a small reach advantage of about 1 inch. Orthodox style fighters, Prochniel is probably going to win, but you're laying a huge amount, and I don't trust his jaw. I could possibly catch him. You got to go under the 1.5 rounds at plus 140. This is a good one. I'm probably going to make this 2.5 stars. For the next fight that we're going to talk about, we're going to go OSP versus Tanner Boser, and that's Ovince St. Pro. Ovince has been around a long time, 38 years old, 6'3", 205 pounds. I love that weight class. Another weight class is the same here. 25 wins, 15 losses, 12 KOs, 8 submissions, 5 decisions. And his losses were mostly by decision, but there's 3 KOs and 3 submissions in there. So he is getting older. Tanner Boser, we just saw him fight. We took him to KO for about a unit, and we took Latifi to win in the distance for a unit, and we hit Latifi. It paid like plus 350. But to be quite honest with you, I'm shocked the scores went with that, because I've seen so many times them go with the striker. Tanner Boser outstruck Latifi. Latifi kind of had to bull him to the ground a couple times, a couple takedowns, but he had control for a little while, but Latifi got his face punched in, and they usually give that to the puncher lately anyway, but they gave that one to Latifi. That was interesting. But in this case, I like what Tanner Boser showed in that fight, right? This is June 5th. It's June 24th here. And he's about ready to fight in like 2 more days. 21 days off. Well, fighters can do that if they're in shape. And Boser just coming off that fight, I like him. Coming off hungry. He lost his last 2 in a row. Shouldn't have lost to Latifi. I thought he was the better fighter. Latifi just out-grappled him. And that was kind of the TV scoring points by taking down, So he appealed to the judges. But looking at this fight, OSP, getting old, like I said, and Boser's only 29. Boser's a striker, 10 KOs, 2 submissions, 7 decisions. He does go to decision, just like you saw, once in a while. And OSP used to go to decision, but if you kind of look at his last fights, his last 2 fights were he lost to Jamal Hill, that just lost to Paul Craig last bout, and he beat Alonzo Menefield in a KO in the second round. Both of those were in the second round, and the one before that was decision against Ben Rothwell, and then one before that was a submission. So OSP, he can do it all. He can KO you, he can submit you, but he can get caught. All right. And if Tanner Boser's smart, he's going to look at what Jamal Hill did to OSP, because that's Tanner Boser's specialty. Okay. That's his specialty. If you look at how these 2 fighters stack up, it looks like Boser has the weight advantage for sure. He's 255. OSP is roughly the 210, 215 weight. He might put on a few pounds for this. I hope he does. OSP's got the bigger reach. He's tall. 6'3" to 6'2". I feel like OSP is a little bit taller than that. But significant strikes landed per minute. Tanner's at 4.2. OSP is only at 2.68. Both at about 55% accuracy. Now, OSP can take him down, but OSP has not been doing that much lately, right? Looking at his fights, he's getting older. I kind of think he's almost on the way out, all right? OSP hasn't won by submission since 2019. In his last 3, 2 KOs and a decision, like I said before. So, fighting a hungry fighter like Tanner Boser is going to be a lot tougher, especially a 29-year-old fighter coming in, right? Boser's ready to make that next step. You know, he's going to be fighting here kind of for his UFC life a little bit. He got into the UFC, won 3 out of 4, and then he lost those 2 in a row. So he wants to stay in the UFC, and I think he's going to KO Ovince Pro. Looking at the price of this fight, minus 185, minus 170-ish, depends upon what book you're looking at. I'm okay with that here with Boser, right? He could go to decision, but I'm okay with that, right? And I think that there's a good chance he knocks him out too, but I like the KO prop on Boser because it's at plus 250. And if he did his homework, he saw that OSP now is getting a little bit light in the jaw, if you know what I'm saying. You know, getting up there in age. Now, OSP is a great wrestler too. That's why he's got 8 submissions out of his 25 wins. But Latifi was a better wrestler. And that's who Tanner Boser just went against. I think Tanner's going to be ready for it. I'm going to put 1.5 units on Tanner, just at the minus 175, minus 180. And I'll put 0.5 unit on Tanner to win by TKO, KO, DQ for plus 250. My friends, if you have any other questions about any of these UFC fights, please feel free to tweet us at the Odds Breakers. Everyone have a fantastic rest of your week. Enjoy the games, enjoy the fights, and go get some winners.